Rosso!
Cotton!
Glorbo!
What did you just...
Great lances, only ruby viserios. Okay?
I don't use the lance.
Oh, Gog, what are the tips that I have written down?
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages,
We are mere hours away from the release of Monster Hunter Wilds worldwide, and as someone with over 100 hours in the game before its launch, I'm going to sit down and share with you 10 things that you should know before playing the game. This won't have any spoilers or anything that isn't already publicly announced as far as monsters or mechanics, but while some of these tips will be aimed at people who, like me, skipped the betas before playing the full game, hopefully some of them will still be useful and helpful to those of you who have played the betas as well. First up, we will start with the more ground level stuff before going deeper. In Wilds, one of the main new mechanics to the game compared to previous Monster Hunters is the wound mechanic. As you damage different body parts of a monster, a visible scar will start to form. Once it is properly opened up, any damage numbers to that part will have little arrows on the corners and will also have increased damage compared to hitting that same part unwounded. This will also enable skills like Weakness Exploit in Wilds to gain a larger affinity boost for you. If you enter focus mode, you can see actively wounded parts on the monster glowing red, and then if you use a focus strike on that part and connect with it, you will enter an animation that not only has iframes, so you can use this to counter incoming monster attacks and not take damage if you time it right, but also it guaranteed pops the wound with the last hit of the animation. Aside from this, wounds will also pop if enough damage is done to them manually too, and it's also important to note here too that a lot of monsters will have specific attacks that create sort of false wounds where you can actually use the focus strike on a part that isn't actively wounded as just a response to that attack. The main reason it's really important to be aware of this mechanic, this past actual, damage increase in the iframes, the focus strikes, is that every time that you pop a wound on a monster, you get a part drop, including those fake wounds that you get during certain attacks. So the more wounds that you pop in a fight, the more materials you'll get from the monster. More wounds, easier crafting of equipment, and so one of the earliest things I recommend you do is get used to abusing the weakened, injured parts of each monster that you create, especially if you want to actually wear their skin long term. This isn't about you, go away! Second, I wanted to dive into the other extremely important parts of focus mode. The focus strike is the obvious part, and every weapon has this. We've already talked about it a little bit, but one thing a lot of players haven't yet realized, even in the beta, is that you can press in the left stick on controller to fire the slinger with your weapon drawn while in focus mode. It is the only way to fire the slinger without sheathing your weapon, and this can make it much easier to use your slinger properly in combat, including things like flash pods or screamer pods, or even dung pods. The other main secondary benefit of focus mode in general is the way that it not only re-aims your attacks to hit wherever your camera is looking, but for a lot of attacks it also adds forward momentum to them in the direction that you're aiming to. To be a bit more specific, let's use hammer as an example with some really long wind-up attacks, and especially things like Big Bang. If I were to do Big Bang on hammer without focus mode, I would be able to use it in this direction. I'd be able to turn a little bit in between the attacks, but not too much, and that sort of sucks for an attack that you have to hit every attack to actually get to the final part of the combo. But if you activate focus mode, then you can turn literally like the entire way around in between every strike of the Big Bang combo, which means that you can actually use Big Bang on monsters that aren't downed as long as you are positioned well, and that's a really nice extra addition that focus mode adds to the weapons too. That said, the main thing that I wanted to say is just get used to using focus mode. Whether you choose to play with it constantly on and active, or just use it for micro adjustments here or there, it will make your gameplay feel so much smoother, and you will stop missing most of the attacks that you otherwise would have. On a similar note to that, third up, have a look through these settings and do some messing around, especially do it after loading into the game. The options menu is actually very different on the main menu compared to within the actual world, and a lot of the things that you can only access in world are important things to actually see. In the controls section, for example, I recommend every player turns off auto sheath. It's more likely to get you hurt than it is to help, and it's always on by default in a Monster Hunter game. For focus mode, you can swap it from needing to have the button held down to being something that you can toggle as well, which some players will actually prefer. In the game settings, you can change how your minimap works. I set mine to be fixed rotation and angle because it just helps me get my bearings better than the whole rotating minimap that it gives you by default. And I also recommend turning off Seikret Auto Explore as a setting so that it only directly transport you to targets that you have manually set. Otherwise, it will just start bringing you to everything along the way that is on the map. As well, a really big setting here is weapon attack power display. For brand new players, the default setting with the coefficient on is fine. What this does is adjust the attack stat number for every weapon type to give you a sort of representation of the damage that weapon will do per hit, meaning greatsword have big attack number, sword and shield have small attack number, even if the weapons are of equal power within themselves. But the reality is that every individual attack in the game has hidden motion values which decide the actual damage of the attacks for each weapon, and the attack stat itself is actually identical for both weapons. So setting it to display without this coefficient shows you what is called the true raw for all weapons, which is why I can show you a rarity 3 hammer with 140 attack and a rarity 3 sword and shield with 130 attack. This is the power difference between the Hope SNS and the Rompopolo hammer, not the difference between SNS and hammer in general. Then the last setting that I want to directly call out here is camera distance. This didn't start maxed out by default, but more camera distance and more zoom out means that you can see more of the area at any given time, and more awareness makes it easier to avoid damage. It's as simple as that. Next up, use offset attacks. Not every weapon has an offset attack, but greatsword, hammer, hunting horn, switch axe, heavy bowgun, and added in after the betas, an offset attack was also given to insect glaive for its new charge attack, descending slash. These attacks essentially function as a parry for every related weapon. If a monster is doing a physical attack and your offset attack hits the monster as you are about to take damage from it or are in its hitbox, a gnarly sound will play, the screen will shake a bit, you'll ignore the majority of the damage from it and not get flinched either, and the first time that you offset a monster, it will get you a free full knockdown on them. Then it's 2 offsets to get the next knockdown, with increasing resistance each time. The point being that this gives not only a way towards extra knockdowns in every fight, but also a really potent defensive and offensive tool too, as learning to time these right will both ignore an incoming attack and deal damage in response, even outside of the knockdown component. Not to mention that hitting a good offset is like the most satisfying thing in the entire game, so whether it's effective or not, I would be spamming that thing like all hell personally. Fifth tip, put text on your stickers. You can edit the text on all of your stickers and make them custom, and it's really just silly and fun for group play with other people. Okay, look, this wasn't an efficiency tip, but it's more part of a general content that is, have fun with the game. Being a good hunter is a fun thing to aspire to, being good at the actual killing of monsters, and it's an enjoyable thing to be good at using the game's new mechanics too. But sometimes it's nice to just take a moment and enjoy the sillier, calmer side of the games too. Mess with your stickers, stomp on some baby Seikrets, bump into the NPCs to see how irritated they get with you when you do, stomp all over the baby Seikrets, cook yourself a nice meal and enjoy the cutscene that pops up while you stomp on some baby. Okay, you get the idea. The game is not a sprint. Enjoy being good at it, but also make sure that you stop to smell the roses along the way too, and enjoy all of the sillier sides of it along the way. Sixth up, when you get knocked down by a monster, there are a few different states that you can wind up in. For heavier attacks, the most common one is where you are fully laying on the floor. While downed like this, you have iframes in case another attack were to come in and hit you, as long as you do not touch the left stick and start moving, because that will make you start standing up immediately. This is one of the biggest initial skills to learn as a new hunter, is just knowing when to stay down, because getting up too early is one of the main causes of carding as far as I'm concerned across all Monster Hunter games. But you can actually extend these iframes even longer in Wilds, and a lot of players don't know about this yet. For those who played Rise and Sunbreak, you will remember a mechanic called wire fall. You can expend a wire bug while on the floor to pull yourself up and move, which also had extra iframes. You can get a very similar effect in this game by calling your Seikret when you are down. Specifically, I'd recommend doing the down on the D-pad input while you are laying on the floor, and this will give you manual control of the Seikret when it runs up to you and picks you up directly from the floor. They will run up while you're downed, and if they are close enough, they will pick you up before you get up, which will give you extra iframes from what you would have had, and of course on top of that, once you actually exit your invulnerability mode, you will already be moving at full mount speed, so you can put some distance between the monster and yourself if you need to get some healing in too. This is one of the greatest tools for staying alive in Wilds. It applies to every fight, every monster, and there's no better way to put it. After that, let's talk about the radial menu real quick. This has existed in prior games of the Monster Hunter series, of course, a way to set shortcuts to different items or social features to avoid having to go through the whole menu or item pouch each time, but Wilds has an extremely useful feature that will likely convert even the most stubborn people into finally using the radial wheel, and this is the default left and right options on the wheel, which are optimal health recovery and optimal status recovery. The health option here will actively choose between using an herb, a potion, a mega potion, a max potion, depending on how much health you are missing and what is in your inventory, and it's generally really quite good. It's really good at conserving your actual good potions and your good healing for when you need it for the more important moments of the fight, and this is a massive source of bonus quality of life. The other option, optimal status recovery, will do the same, but for statuses. If you have Dragon Blight and you want to get rid of it, it'll consume a nullberry. If you've got poison, it'll use an antidote, unless you are carrying herbal medicine and are missing some health, in which case it'll prioritize those. those. The point is that this will make all types of recovery extremely simple. It removes a lot of the brain power from actually recovering yourself, and it frees up more mind space for watching the monster's attacks and avoiding them, making the fights just feel easier once you get used to the system. Then for our 8th bit of juicy knowledge, while riding your Seikret, you can toggle the auto move function. This will move you automatically towards either any set waypoint or towards your targeted monster on a quest early on in the game, and for when you want to just sort of brain off hunt later on, this is a really fantastic tool. It shows you tons of ways to get around the map that you would likely just not find otherwise for like 20 hours or more, and it gets you to the monsters relatively efficiently. Not to mention the fact for the people that do only want to hunt and don't enjoy any of the stuff in between, you can literally let the Seikret do all the movement, put the controller down, and just wait. That's it. I'd say after your 3rd or 4th time on each map, I really recommend trying to navigate with the auto move function off. Long term, part of truly understanding a Monster Hunter game is of course having a good knowledge of the maps and the areas that you're fighting in as well, and when auto moving on the Seikret, I found I had very little concept of what each zone really was, or what part of the map I was really on, the ways the thing connected, and that only properly changed when I stopped using auto move and started actually taking in all the paths and such myself, which is when I started to make much better use of the actual environmental traps too, because I started to know exactly where they were in each zone. Of course, I still play with auto move on a lot in the endgame, but it really helped me get to grips with the maps to turn this off for a bit, so I thought I'd share that experience. Up in 9th then, this one will actually save you a lot of stress, or at least a bit of time. Talk to the NPCs more than you think you need to. There are side quests in Monster Hunter Wilds, and these are generally worth doing for various different reasons, but a lot of them will give you very little initial information, like, hey, I want you to catch a specific fish, and then the dialogue will end and it'll walk you away, but if you then were to go back to that same NPC and talk to them again, they'd actually immediately tell you more information about the fish they want you to catch, like what season or time of day the fish is most likely to appear at, what bait it prefers, things like that, and without actually knowing that information, you're just sort of throwing darts at a board that's constantly in motion. So talk to the NPCs in general, talk to them more than you think you need to, and if you are ever confused about an objective, just try talking to the NPC that gave you that quest to begin with, and most likely they will be able to clear it up for you pretty quickly. To sort of tag onto this one with a bonus tip, you can rest in your tent and change either the weather or time of day, which not only helps for these side quests, but also resets the monsters on a map in case the target that you're after isn't around at that moment in time. Final tip of the day, use your second weapon slot. Yes, it may seem obvious, but I really want to drill it into your head. Sure, some people like me will use these properly to literally have multiple weapons. I often carry around both hammer and hunting horn, and then if the group I'm hunting with feels like I could use some heals, I swap over the horn. If it feels like we'd use some more knockdowns or just general stun locking, I'll go over and get to work with the hammer, but I know not everyone likes to hunt with multiple weapons, and that doesn't mean that this function is going to be useless for you. Other ways you can easily take advantage of it with one weapon type are with multiple different element options with you, or you could even just make literally a second one of the same exact weapon and swap it out instead of sharpening when sharpness runs low. It's a meme to do that, but hey, I'd rather you do that than just never use your second weapon slot to begin with. You can also do even very minimal stuff with it if you prefer, just not thinking about it often, like maybe carry a greatsword or a hammer around only for wake up hits or the sneak attacks, or maybe you carry a healing hunting horn, but you only use it to heal for free in between zones or something like that. At the end of the day, how you use your second weapon slot is entirely up to you, but the option is there, and please use it. I beg of you. All in all, there's been a lot of talk about Monster Hunter Wilds being a bit of an easy game from some of the various reviewers, and my personal thoughts are that it's a combination of being the low-ranked game, which always gets this response, really. World, Rise, both of them got the exact same things said about them from people who had already played Monster Hunter before, and then all of the new tools and quality of life for hunters that have been added in too. There are so many changes that give you more options in every situation, more ways to get out of trouble, more ways to sneak in extra damage or hit with those attacks that otherwise would have missed without a cheeky focus mode turn, or even just the optimal health and status recovery, making you fiddle around with inventory less often and less awkwardly. Combine that with the fact that every hunter gets better at Monster Hunter the more that they play individual Monster Hunter games, as well as changes to both how skills work on equipment and the low and high rank split within the game, and it's relatively clear to me at least why people have this feeling. If you want it to be a tough game, purposely avoid upgrading your weapon more than you need to. Unequip an armor piece or two along the way, but I truly believe that the main reason that this game would feel any easier than any other modern Monster Hunter game as a base is a sheer combination of quality of life and new mechanics, giving players so much extra control and so much extra power if used properly. I hope you've all enjoyed this and I can't wait for you all to get your own hands on Monster Hunter Wilds and experience the game for yourself. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.